Hello, and welcome to this slightly delayed episode of JRPTea-Time. So, today we're going to be talking about censorship. Censorship in JRPGs, mainly because it's a semi-hot topic every time a new game comes out that has found to have some kind of censorship in it. There seems to be a lot of controversy surrounding it. And I'm going to talk about whether it actually matters and, actual censorship and sort of meaningless censorship and all that other kind of stuff. But since we're doing something a little bit naughty, censorship, I thought I would find a tea with something that I thought had maybe a slightly naughty sounding name if you have a dirty mind. So that would be Twinkleberry. I think Twinkleberry has a slightly dirty sounding name. So we will get this started. I have pre-boiled, so you don't have to listen to that on the camera. I'm getting better at that. Alright, so it's just 1 teaspoon of Twinkleberry. Oh god. Okay, 1 teaspoon of Twinkleberry. 100 degrees. And that'll be 3 to 5 minutes. Which again, will give us plenty of time to talk. Alright. So, censorship. The last big one that I can think of was Xenoblade Chronicles X on Wii U. It had it wasn't a lot of censorship, let's be clear. It was essentially editing some costumes for one of the characters who, in the Japanese version, was underage. Yeah, they were essentially just making it so it was less revealing because there were some pretty revealing costumes, like G-strings essentially for I believe the character was 14 years old. Does that really matter? There was people on both sides of the argument. Yes, it does really matter because there shouldn't be censorship in any form. It should just be given. It really doesn't matter. That's a very minor piece of censorship. It's a very, very minor piece of censorship. But I can be on the other side as well. Not for the fact that I think, nothing should be censored. I can think that way because it doesn't really affect me. But obviously, the people behind the localization think that it will affect sales, which is more important overall. Let's be clear that it's much more important that we got Xenoblade Chronicles X in the state that it was than not getting it at all. And if sales aren't good enough on these games, then we won't be getting them at all. And that's the biggest thing you have to take out of this. If removing a certain portion or censoring a certain portion of the game will drastically increase sales because it can be sold at a lower age rating or it can be sold to a younger audience, then that's a good thing. Yes, we're getting something that might not be quite 100% of what they had in Japan, but at least we're getting it. And that's the biggest thing to take out of that. The only thing that I am against censorship about is if the developers or the localizers, take an extended period of time to censor these things that don't matter, then that's increasing the time between launches. So Japan will get it, 6 months beforehand, and in cases 2 years or more beforehand, and all this time is spent censoring some really minor things, like alternate costumes or optional costumes or accessories or mini games that you might not even run into. And if they're spending a significant chunk of time on removing this stuff, that's really annoying. I can be on the side of no censorship because of that. If they have to spend 6 months extra just to censor certain things, then you gotta then think that you're hitting a point where now you're releasing it so late, so far on from the Japanese release, that you've lost all sort of hype and marketing behind it. So there has to be a happy medium, and I think that most companies most localized versions of games that have censorship hit that medium pretty well. I mean, I can't imagine that those Xenoblade Chronicles X costumes took a long time to edit, essentially because they just added like a black undergarment so it wasn't a G-string anymore. That stuff would have taken a very minimal amount of time, and we essentially got the game, its vision and everything 100%. We got that game, and it didn't take a very, very long time to come out between the Japanese and Western releases. And that's something to think about, because I always see the argument, and I will just, we'll get some tea going, I think. This looks good. I haven't actually tried this tea yet, so I will let it cool down before drinking so I don't burn myself like the first time. And then we'll try it. Yeah, that's something that I don't see talked about a lot, is people on the no censorship side just essentially say that games shouldn't have censorship. And then people on the it doesn't matter side don't think about how it actually does affect them. Because while the actual censorship may not affect you, the time that the localizers are putting into these censorship, these censors, does affect you, because now you're getting the game much later. But the stupidest thing, I think, about the whole thing, the no censorship side of the argument always has some boycott buying the game, you know, boycott censorship by not buying the game, you know, vote with your wallets. You're not boycotting censorship at that stage. What you're doing is boycotting the game ever coming to us, because JRPGs only get localized over here if the company sees some sort of profit potential. There's a reason that not every Tales game comes over here, because when they did start bringing over the spin-off titles, they were selling like rubbish. Tales of the World on PSP sold like crap. That's why we don't get Tales of the World games anymore. That's why we don't get all the handheld spin-off titles apart from Tales of Hearts R. And they even said Tales of Hearts R needs to sell decently for them to keep putting all this time, effort, and money into localizing the games. So if you see a game come over here and it's got a censored mini game, you know, like a lot of Idea Factory games will have a removal of a mini game or something, or Fire Emblem. There was massive controversy over Fire Emblem Fates, the petting minigame. Essentially, it wasn't even a minigame. It was just in cutscenes you were able to bring up a little hand and rub things. Does that really affect your experience, not being able to do that? I mean, it may affect you a little bit, but it doesn't affect the game in any way. And saying, let's boycott the sales, let's not buy it so we can boycott it, just means that we're less likely to get Fire Emblem games in the future in any way. It's much better for us to get a game that has mild censorship, or censorship that really doesn't matter, than not getting them at all. And by saying, let's boycott censorship, by not buying it, you're not saying let's boycott censorship, you're saying let's boycott ever getting these games again. That's the silly thing. You can boycott censorship by telling the developers, by emailing or tweeting or social media en masse. You can get your group together, you can tell people to tell them that they really didn't like the censorship in that game. Developers listen that way. No big wig in a suit, in a corporate suit, up in the corporate office is looking at forum posts or tweets over their sales numbers. That's what they're mainly interested in, sales numbers. That is what's going to determine whether or not a game or a series is going to keep getting localized. Not some mild vocal minority on social media saying that they didn't like the censorship and they're not going to buy it, because that is not reflected in their sales. You saying people not buying it is not reflecting in their sales overall. If you all did buy it, it's just a little bit inching towards getting us more chance of having a localization. That's what you need to be thinking of. You need to be attacking it in a completely different way. If you really don't like the censorship, then contact the developer. They have customer support emails, they have emails, they all have social media accounts. That's where you need to be active. You don't vote with your wallet, because it's much more important that we're getting these games in the states that they're in than not getting them at all. There was, actually, I will just drink this tea first. Let's try the tea. Once again, nearly burnt myself that time, because it's still extremely hot. That's, it's quite interesting, Apparently it has beetroot in it, which gives it that sort of colour. Let's have a look. Okay. No, it's not on the packet. I read it somewhere else. It has some beetroot in it, but that's pretty fruity. I wouldn't say naughty. I wouldn't say it needs censorship, but it's pretty fruity. Yeah, so you attack them on social media, or you don't attack them, you let your concerns know on social media, but things that really don't matter are stuff like optional costumes. If the localizers aren't taking a large chunk of their time to censor these things, and they're really minor parts of the game, they really don't matter. Okay, you can say, oh, it's going to be a slippery slope or something like that, but historically it hasn't been, because most of the time, the only things that get censored are these minor things. And they do it precautionary so that when they send it in to ratings boards, they aren't given a massively high rating. They're doing it preemptively. Even if there's only a small chance that that stuff will be seen by the ratings board, it's still just done in most of the times it's done in haste. By the way, most of these censorships are not really incredible censorships. Like, as I said in Xenoblade Chronicles X, essentially they just put black pants underneath the G-string, or black shorts underneath the G-string. They don't take a long amount of time, and they're very minor. They're minor to us playing them, but they're massive to ratings boards, because ratings boards have ridiculous checklists and guidelines and stuff like that. And if they see, oh, there's a butt in a G-string, we have to immediately up that to a certain rating. Like, it's not exactly like that, but that's the kind of thing that they work on. Whereas we see, well, that might have been censored, I guess. That optional costume is probably censored, so we can't see their butt. It doesn't really affect us, right? Because if you really want to see this character's butt, and that's the other thing, if you really want to see these characters, then you can go watch a Japanese gameplay video of the exact same game, or I'm sure you could just Google the multitudes of fan-made porn content, which I'm sure is out there, for pretty much every game that you can think of that has been censored in some way. It shouldn't really be an issue. Stuff like there are also some other cases like Ghostlight's PC ports. They still have the censorship in them that was originally brought over for the PlayStation 3 makes, and some people attack Ghostlight for not making them the uncensored versions, and there's a perfectly good reason for that. It's because Idea Factory gave Ghostlight the PlayStation 3 version to port. That was simply it. And in some cases, for Mugen Souls Z specifically, Ghostlight were okay to port the uncensored version, but when they submitted it to Steam, it was denied. And some people say that's a load of crap because, there are much more, sexualized games like Galgun and stuff that P-Cube do that get denied. The thing is, though, that Galgun wasn't ever released in a censored way. So somebody at the Steam's approval looks at a game like Galgun and sees that it's never been censored before, this is the first time it's coming over, tick. They look at a game like Mugen Souls Z and see that, oh, well, this game was censored on the PlayStation 3, so why are you submitting an uncensored version here? And then, through queries, might see that it was censored for overly sexualized content, blah blah blah, which, back when Mugen Souls Z was released, which is not even that long ago, but Steam were sticklers for sexual content. Like, there's only been a story recently where a woman has fought tooth and nail to get her story that depicts female nudity in it onto Steam, and it was a massive undertaking because Steam has been very strict on that kind of thing historically. So yes, there is a very good chance that what Ghostlight said in that the uncensored version was denied is 100% true, because there would have been documented evidence elsewhere that the game was censored. So when Steam went to approve it and saw that they're submitting an uncensored version of a game that was previously censored, they would have dug into that, seen that it was censored for sexualized content and female nudity, and they probably would have denied it. So then they simply did the next best thing, which was to port the censored version. But a lot of Ghostlight's games, they were only given the censored version to port from Idea Factory. They're not the main developers, they're simply the publishers and porters. So you have to look at the reasons for censorship, you have to ask yourself whether the censorship even matters. But most importantly, you don't boycott censorship by not buying them. You boycott censorship by letting the developers know that you are concerned about the censorship and you would rather have none, or you don't want it to turn into a slippery slope. Because by boycotting censorship, by not buying the game, all you're doing is boycotting games ever coming to us. That's the most important thing to take out of it. And also to take out of it is that tea is actually pretty good, and I'm gonna drink some more. So, hit that like button, guys. Jump your questions, jump down to the comment section and let me know your questions for, let me know your questions for this video, but also if you have any questions, I would want to do a Q&A for further JRPTea-Time videos. So it would be great if you could jump down, give me some questions if you want questions, or you can suggest a subject. I'm just sort of talking about things that either relevant things or things just pop into my head, and I've wanted to talk about censorship for a while because I'm sort of on both sides of the camp, in that I don't care for censorship. I don't think most of the time that it really matters. The only time that it does matter is if the localizer is spending a large chunk of development time on it when it doesn't matter. So that's it. Leave a comment, like this video, dislike it if you didn't like it, all that stuff. Follow me on social media, and I'll see you guys next week.